Hello, so good afternoon. My name is Benoit Senellart, and I will share this talk with Erick, my partner in business.
Morning.
And we wanted to have a look about existing infrastructure and more, to be more accurate, how we can use this existing infrastructure to improve mobility, regional mobility. So, of course, we are glad to be here in London to speak about aviation and share vision with everybody. London is known to have the best network transportation infrastructure, which is very important for this a city who have millions of people inside and millions of visitors coming every year. In the next 10 years, half of the population will live in urbanized area, and 43 megacities like London will be spread all over the world and mainly in Asia. But what about all the other half? The other half of the population will live outside the urbanized area, and a quarter of them will live also in a low-density urban area. Why do they do that? They probably are born there, they work there, or they choose to live urbanized area, large city, to have a better living, better conditions, and more environmental friendly area. That's what we've done. We live in Chambéry. It's in Savoie, in the Alps. And that's an amazing area where we can find mountains, lake, but also city. We have everything we need to work. Everything. We add also infrastructure. We have 2 hubs, Lyon and Geneva. We have 4 airports business, Chambéry, Annecy, and probably more than 20 airfields, airports within 100 kilometers. But even with that, it's barely impossible to do a round trip during a day to the other side of France or in Europe. So the main problem for this kind of area is communication and how you move outside this area, so means of the mobility outside of this area. Mobility also is very important in these activities for tourism, because we see that most of the time tourism attractions are not inside the city, are not inside a very big urbanized area. In France, for example, you have the Alps, the Riviera, the coast, Atlantic coast. And if you look at the flow also of the movement and the share between residents and tourism, it's really different. So area where there is a lot of tourists doesn't have the good, accurate infrastructure, because they welcome tourism during very seasonal period. So during this time, infrastructure are very saturated, but the other time, the infrastructure are not used. So that's why also area doesn't invest in big infrastructure. And we see in Europe that the status of most of the area is that the accessibility is not good enough. It's very good in, of course, urbanized area, but in all other area, it's not satisfying. So a lot of region, of the area, department, needs to attract population, needs to attract business also. And for some of them, for the tourist areas, they have to deal with a huge variation of flow. But they want to do that without, they want to increase also this capacity without billions of dollars investments. I heard sooner that we are talking about rail. Rail is something like 20 million per kilometer of investment to create a railway. So not all the region wants to have that. And it's known also that flights, mobility, air mobility increase is good for economics, because it increases the tourists, it increases also GDP and foreign direct investments, and it creates also social developments and more employment. So area as city has a good interest in developing regional aviation. If we look at the share, which is, there's no surprise in that, cars also is now overwhelming all the transportation, passenger per kilometers. Trains also has a small share, and it's pretty stable. Trains is not developing. It's very hard, as I said, to invest in more railway. Especially the high-speed train is very expensive. And the air transport has a small share, but is very dynamical. The increase of the air transport is 5% per year, and in the past 10 years, it was more than 50%. And if we have a closer look of the shares for the air transport, it has nearly 20% in the remote area. the area such as island, coast, far from the most urbanized area, has bigger share for aviation. So the further you go and the less accessible it is, you want to take the airplanes. If we have a look at the flown distance, so this number actually, the number of departure within Europe to go inside Europe or outside Europe, we can easily see that the majority of the fly are below 100 and 600 kilometers. And the flown distance, the average, the bigger number is to fly 400 kilometers. And a specific case in Norway, where we have seen that there is a lot of remote area, the distance is 200 kilometers. This is very different than in the US, where the territory is not the same, the habits neither, and the average flight is 3,000 kilometers with aircraft. It's also because car is preferred until 1,600 kilometers. So the air transport today is roughly more than 6,000 aircraft for commercial fleet, and more than 10 million instrument flight are performed. In Europe, all these flights are, for the biggest majority, done in 500 airports. It's 98%. And even the 43 biggest airports gather 85% of the traffic. So it's very concentrated. But then we can ask us, is it because people want to go to this area, or is it because we drive us through this area? But Europe has more than 2,500 airports and landfills. So that's a huge difference between the 43 and the 2,500. And even in the big city where the big hubs are, there are between 4 to 45 airfields within 50 kilometers to the city center. So if we add the vehicles adapted, we can really choose different airports, airfields, and go out of the big hub to fly to other places. And what is nice also, and you'll see why I do that, if we look at the waterways in Europe, you have waterways anywhere, everywhere, and you don't need to have new infrastructure. There's water everywhere in Europe, in the world also. And specifically in Europe, there is already 40,000 kilometers of navigable waterway. It is used, boats are on that. And just in France, it's 8,000 navigable waterway and 5,000 kilometers of seashore. And more, it's nearly 100 lakes that are more than 1 kilometer square. And already 90 that are used for fire bombing. So you can ask yourself if you have ever been to a place where there is a river, where there is a lake close to this location, and if eventually an aircraft can bring you there. Because in France and most of the places in the world, there's water in every city. Here is Bordeaux, where bombers are sometimes going. Lyon, close to our city, there is a big city. And if you look at that, why don't we have aircraft on this small deck? And it's 5 minutes from the city center. And also on the coast, the pier are large facility, and we can wonder why we don't have airplanes just next to the boats to reach the city center within less than 5 minutes. Monaco also is a remote place, it's hard to access, but with water you can just land close to the city. And Geneva. So you can imagine different routes, different flyway, different city to reach without reaching the big hub. That's how we want to see the regional mobility, and we really think we can have sustainable mobility for short-haul journey, less than 1,000 nautical miles, that doesn't need new infrastructure. We just need to have new propulsion system, and we are talking about electricity all day long here. We'll need new control system, fly-by-wire. All of that is to lower the cost, but we need also new vehicles. We see the Alice, and we are thinking about something that really could bring people to another mobility. And we also need another way to book our flights. Like we do for an Uber, we can book flights this way also. So aviation also, we can look at regional mobility as a new paradigm if you want to, we change it. Then let Erick speak about what we have as a proposal, one of the several projects.
Yes, today we want to present you our contribution to the next generation of aviation. Today, as Benoit said, we have in Europe 40 big hubs with complex infrastructure. Just we see that there are a lot of small surfaces, and we focused on every surface are less than 1,000 feet, so it's a very small surface. So there are surfaces like water, but also small grass airfields, and so on. And everyone, and then you can compare in Europe you can find millions of this kind of surface. Very close from the people who are living not inside a big city, but outside in the country. So what we have to change, first, as we explained, not just going to the big hub, but also one question very important that is driven our strategy is why aircraft must fly at more than 400 knots for some small trips. Because if you look at, yesterday we came from Chambéry to London. It's something like 400 knots, 400 nautical miles, and we took more than 6 hours, something like 7 hours. It's it's completely stupid to fly at this speed and take more than 6 hours to make 400 nautical miles. So we propose to change that, because that's the speed is driven the aircraft design. That is very important. It's not just aircraft design. Everything, infrastructure, safety, etc., is driven by the speed. And when you look for the same trip for 400 nautical miles, just with 150 knots, you will take just 3 hours. But if you are able to take off very close from the point E and land very close to point B. So that's one very important point, not be obliged to fly a very high speed. The next one is something we have to change. You know, every time people are saying in the aircraft industry, if you want to have a profitable aircraft, you have to build and to design a very big aircraft. Okay, but perhaps you can do something smaller. Our proposal is just a 19 seats aircraft. If you look at something very, very important for us, is not the energy, electrical energy or fuel energy, etc., but aerodynamic efficiency, because everybody talk about what's about the energy storage, but nobody talk about the aerodynamic efficiency. This is the key point if you want to have a new aircraft regional solution. We have to focus on aerodynamic, and that we don't. And then you can have, with smaller aircraft, better efficiency, better profitable aircraft with smaller aircraft. And also, as I'm sure everybody agree about that, today airlines are very rigid, and you have to choose a flight with a time schedule, etc. And our proposal is to have an on-demand airlines combined with the very small surfaces, very efficient aircraft, so you can have a very flexible network of regional airlines. Also, one point for us very different is that, of course, everybody knows that the discomfort when you fly is so crazy. I don't know why we accept to continue to fly in those kind of conditions. And our proposal is that Also, if you compare with small aircraft or small business jet, there is better comfort, but it's not so easy. And our proposal is to make so big aircraft seems to be bigger, but it's not big. It's a large space inside the aircraft in order to have better comfort. And also very important, if we want to have a new regional transport system, it's not just a question of passenger, but you need also to make a good transportation and some materials. So it's important to have an aircraft very flexible. And now everything we propose is based on the LISA technology. This company we represent developed in the past year some very dedicated technology for multi-access in order to take off and landing everywhere. And Benoit will explain you this technology.
One of the core of this technology is the C-foil. We are the first and still the only manufacturer to adapt hydrofoils to aircraft. And we see how smooth it is, and even it waves. It's smooth because you cut the wave, and it really is the takeoff, depending the water. And it has intrinsic safety. It's not possible to roll over the aircraft with the hydrofoils. But most of all, and we see that on this picture, is the efficiency of the aircraft. We can land on water, and we have no hull, no floats. And then in the air, it's like a conventional aircraft. The fuel consumption and the speed is like other conventional. Multi-access comes also with wheels and skis in order to be able to land on ground and snow. And the skis are built within the wheels. And once again, the efficiency, so everything comes inside the aircraft so that you don't have to lower your speed and your consumption. So in conclusion, what we propose is that with the existing infrastructure, come back on that, and a shared fleet, because we need a fleet of aircraft to operate a network, we can have a new on-demand flight organization, skies, and last time, skies can be affordable and environmental friendly to imagine regional journey. And next time you'll be able to land or take off just to private property to have a weekend, but also to take this fly in front of the city center. So thank you for your attention.